Hello, everyone. Hello. Jeff Rolke here. I hope that you're having a lovely day. My head is a bit cut off. I didn't mean for that to happen. I like it when that's straight, too. Trying some different plugins here for OBS. Hopefully this will work out well. Let's see if I can improve the view a little bit. Remote controls. So cool. All right, that seems reasonable enough. At any rate, I'm going to flip back and forth here. My name is Jeff. I'm a singing instructor. I release a lot of videos on YouTube. Perhaps you're familiar with my work, I don't know. But at any rate, this is a time that I set aside for questions from comments. If you have questions, singing or music related in general, let me know what's going on and perhaps I can help. And I'm going to flip back. The chat is really, really quiet today. Unusually quiet. It makes me think that I've done something wrong. But perhaps not. We'll see. At any rate, oh, here we go. Let's see. I'm going to increase this. There we go. And actually, before I answer your question, well, that's just silly. Okay, fine. I thought maybe the chat would also pop up in the OBS plugin, but apparently no. So I'll just monitor it here. Christina, excited to be joining. I've been having tightness and irritation on the left side of my neck, and sometimes singing becomes painful. I've heard I let too much breath come out. What would you recommend? Andre, it's just the beginning. Hello, Reverie. You know, it could be a lot of different things, honestly. I'm sorry that you're struggling with that. I mean, if you're feeling physical tightness, then at some point you have to assess your breath management. Because typically the voice will compensate for a lack of subglottic air pressure support. It'll use vocal fold tension when there's not the appropriate amount of subglottic air pressure to support what you're singing. So the first thing that I would look at would be how you're using airflow. I would probably do this with dynamic air pressure exercises. Stuff like that. Just keep it nice and easy. Stick to a really very comfortable area of your voice and check through your vowels. Try those dynamic exercises into melismatic scales. So on and so forth. Notice differences between one vowel versus another. Like if one vowel seems pretty balanced and it seems fine, another one's really not like that, then that's a good indication that something's changing, that you don't have the vowel alignment as optimized as you could be. That would at least be a place to start. I'm trying to get away from being shy every time I sing. Every time I sing, my throat closes. Any advice? Step by step. Take it one step at a time. If you're feeling shy, you have a bit of performance anxiety, then figure out incremental challenges that you can try so that you sort of question that shyness or question that performance anxiety. But it's important to just take it in very manageable steps. You want to build on success, not go down in a blaze of glory and feel horrible and then have to work through that in addition to the performance anxiety that you're already experiencing. So manageable, incremental challenges to that frame of mind. That would be the way to work with it. It is a process. Hello, Maestro. Hello, Dario. Andre, can a tenor hit D sharp 2? Well, oof. Well, this tenor can't. I can tell you that much. That's pretty low. I mean, I suppose in like if you got there's singing a note and there's singing a note. If you're talking about sort of croaking out pitch on something, then maybe. I'm still too high. Man, I mean, so there's like a vocal fry kind of, that's probably something to do with like throat singing. I don't know if that counts. I personally wouldn't. I'm not trying to be elitist or anything like that, but that's not part of my singing practice. And that to me is something else. That's a different thing altogether. When I think about singing, I'm thinking about consistency of tone quality through the usable range of my voice. So I might choose to sing something and have it sound a little differently, but in general, I'm looking for consistency. In other words, this note here will sound more or less the same as those notes up there. Certainly there's going to be differences in volume and obviously tessitura, but the tone quality is the same. What I just did there that's not the same thing. That's something different. Still cool though. It's kind of neat to try it. It feels very interesting. So yeah, I don't know. But to sing it like no, not really. Not quite the same thing. Hey Jeff, I've been using your exercise videos for around 7 to 8 years. You're the best. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm glad that they've been serving you so well. That's wonderful. Thank you for being here. My music is under the name Kyler Killick. If you're ever curious, please keep doing your work. It's helped so many. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Christina, you're very welcome. Court is one voice training in a week enough? No, not really. Well, though I suppose it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just wanting to explore your voice and you have no real, you're not really looking for anything beyond that, then sure, why not? That's fine. If you're looking to make progress musically and you want your voice and your vocal abilities to improve, then, maybe once a week will get you there at some point, but it's going to take quite a lot of time. Once a day, that's more the kind of frequency that we're looking for to make regular progress. As a vocalist, but just as a musician in general. It doesn't matter what instrument or discipline you're practicing. Daily practice is where it's at because it's something that needs to be cultivated over time. And even practicing every day, generally we gauge our progress over the course of years as opposed to weeks or months. Remember, find as much public singing as possible. There you go. There's some advice for you. Dario, Maestro Jeff, any advice to practice with the consonant S? Seems to be much present than desirable in studio recording sessions. Yeah, the sibilants are really terrible. And you can certainly de-S. You can use a de-esser, and that will help a little bit. Obviously, practicing. There's an exercise. I think I've only done it in a few videos, and it's really more of a Z-S sound. Zing, 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 zing. And in doing that, you get a feel for what those combinations of consonants feel like. Sing, 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 sing. And in feeling it, you can then learn to control it. to not use as much of it, or sometimes if you want for personal effect or artistic disposition effect, you might even go into it a bit more. It's a striking consonant, particularly when you're using condenser microphones. Really, I was going to say high quality condenser microphones, but any condenser microphone really picks up those sibilant frequencies, and they just kind of come rocketing through the mix. So yeah, zing, 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 zing. You can try it with more of it and try it with less of it. And also notating them in advance. Think about being brief with your S's so that you get through it quickly. And if you can prevent yourself from pressing your tongue forward too much, that will soften it a little bit. But all in good measure, you're going to have to listen and decide how much you need, how much is too much, and it'll probably change from one phrase to the next. I have a really hard time with vocal agility riffs and runs. I have been working on it forever. It feels still not much progress, if at all. Yeah. I mean, not sure what you've been doing to work on that. You can feel free to elaborate, but the first thing that comes to my mind is whether or not you've been practicing ear training. And I specifically mean singing with solfege. And perhaps practicing intervals and things like that. That will absolutely help with hearing and producing, anticipating the notes in the runs and riffs that you're trying to compose, perhaps. And that anticipation will help with your agility. Because if we're trying to make it up as we go, or even if it's something that we've practiced but we're not adequately anticipating where we're going, then we are not going to be as agile. We will be slower and more sluggish than if you have a very firm aural, A-U-R-A-L, concept of what you're trying to sing. Samuel. Hi, Jeff. You are so amazing. Thanks. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for that. What's the best practice you recommend to identify in which notes one's passaggio has started so we don't either pull chest or start transitioning too early? Yeah, that's a good question. There's no single exercise, I'm sorry to say. It's really a combination of things. It's more of a process than any single exercise. The process, there's a 3-video series here on YouTube. It's older. I have more hair. But the information is just as appropriate. I believe the playlist is called How to Sing High, or it's like the High Note series or something like that. I posted a link last time. I'll post a link now. And it goes through the process. One moment, please, while I find your extension. Where are you? There you are. Opening High Note series. Here we are. Oh, wrong button. There's the button I want. There you go. So I posted it in the chat. That goes through the process, but basically, when you are wanting to work on determining a more precise location of where the secondo passaggio is, you're gonna start off honestly by making some assumptions. Ask yourself, what are the attributes of your voice? Where are you most comfortable? Where are you least comfortable? What do you do well with your singing? Those elements, the answers to those questions will inform where you kind of make a sort of hypothesis, if you will. But generally speaking, if you're a tenor or a baritone, the difference between lyric baritone and tenor robusto is right there. So it's all very close together. You might just consider this zone the area that you're targeting. And what you're going to do, and this, the 3 video series that I just sent starts this process. It goes through these steps. You're going to start by just establishing access. You, cricothyroid dominant singing voice, head voice. You, chest voice, right? Thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. You. Sure, you can hear the difference. Of course, I want you to hear the difference. I'm demonstrating it so that you can hear the difference. The point here, though, is you want to make sure that you are making that transition. And then you're going to narrow the gap. And when you narrow the gap, you're going to start to feel the tendencies of your voice. But you do that when you're consistently able to make the transition. And as you get further and further along with the process, you will start to notice, making that transition to head voice there, it feels too early, or it feels too late, or I feel like I'm squeezing more than I need to. In addition, while you're in the process, sorry, I couldn't find the buttons. While you're doing that process, you're also going to begin exercises that slowly creep upwards from where your primo passaggio roughly is going to be. So for most tenors and baritones, the primo passaggio is going to be right around here. And you're going to creep up on it. Me, 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 ah. Me, 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 ah. Me, 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 ah. And again, you're listening, you're noticing. Well, that felt like it wants to tip over, and that feels like it's pretty good. Or that feels like it's elongating more than it really ought to be and still be thyroarytenoid chest voice dominant. It should probably tip over. You have to observe these things. This is honestly where a teacher can be very helpful, because they'll be able to listen and notice what's going on with your voice. Recording yourself can be very useful during those sessions to make sure everything's going well. And with practice and process, you will narrow down to where your secondo passaggio is. I think someone asked this question or something similar the last live event, and I'm just going to shamelessly plug High Note Bootcamp. High Note Bootcamp's not free. That's the course that I made that does all of what this is in an extremely incremental process. So the 3 video series that I just shared via the chat, like, the information is there, but it's extremely condensed, and it's, for some people, I'm sure it works just great, and that's wonderful. That's why I did the 3 video series. For others, it would do well to break down the process more incrementally, and that's what I did in High Note Bootcamp. So if you think you might be interested in High Note Bootcamp, check out the 3 video series first. That might do the trick, and then you don't have to worry about the other stuff. If you want a more incremental procedure for it, then have a look at High Note Bootcamp. If you have any questions, get in touch via my website, and I'll answer your questions about the program, and we can determine, or you can determine, whether or not it's really what you're looking for and the right fit for you. But that's the process there. Passaggio at E4, is it considered to be baritenor or more of lyric baritone? Well, I just, actually, it's funny, I didn't see your question, Andre, but I just answered that. But to elaborate somewhat on my earlier response, different schools of voice will classify it differently. So some people will say that E4 is baritenor land. Other people will say that that is a lyric baritone. I can tell you that in the books that I have, E4 is labeled a lyric baritone. That is the reason why for a very long time I never did baritenor videos, because it was covered in the baritone land. And sometimes I still group those together, and sometimes I group the baritoners with the tenors. Depends on what the exercises are doing. Yeah, basically. So yeah, and this touches on a more far-reaching point, which is that there's very little consensus in the vocal pedagogical community on a lot of terms and classifications. And it's worth keeping in mind that the FOC system, so the FOC system are the labels: soprano, mezzo-soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, blah, 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 all that stuff. The FOC system was originally designed to help directors, opera directors, find vocalists for roles. So while I am of the opinion that the more we can learn about our voices, the more that we'll get out of them, I wouldn't overly stress too much about what label your voice gets. Because at the end of the day, it's how you use what you have, not necessarily what it is called. And the darker side of all that is that sometimes, I'm sorry I'm so scratchy today. Something is clearly not agreed with my skin, and I'm like, I don't have fleas. At least, I don't think I have fleas. I suppose it can't be ruled out, but last time I checked, of course I don't check very much. Anyway, moving swiftly on. The darker side of the FOC stuff is a lot of vocalists will want to be something, or they will label themselves as something, or they will have had a label put on them by someone who didn't necessarily know what they were talking about. Or even worse still is when they haven't necessarily, they've just been asked to sing a part in a choir. Just because you've been asked to sing the fill in the blank part in the choir, soprano, mezzo, alto, tenor, baritone part in the choir, doesn't make you that FOC. It just means that you're kind of in the zone and you can manage those pitches. Or it could be that the repertoire has narrow enough tessitura that it's fairly manageable for most different vocalists. Or it might be that the baritones need some help and you have great ear training, so you can manage those pitches and you can help the baritone section. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've got that vocal range designation. So kind of went on a little bit longer than I probably needed to, but hopefully I've answered your question. Sometimes I want to sing in harmony, but I am only able to sing one octave up or octave down. I'd try some harder harmony like thirds. Yeah, practice is where it's at. I would suggest starting by harmonizing with yourself. So, do a quick recording of a song that you're really familiar of, you know the melody really well, and then work it out from there. If you read music, if you have some facility on either guitar or piano, then find what the first note of the melody is in relationship to the note of the chord, and then give yourself, on the guitar instrument, the next note, or your first starting note for the harmony part. So for example, let's just say, for the sake of argument, the melody starts on the tonic. Then you might start on the third. And from there, easy for me to say, you can very quickly be off to the races. You got to listen very carefully. Ear training will help a lot with this. So do your solfège, and that will serve you very, very well. That's like the fast track to harmony singing, in my opinion. I practice your mezzo-soprano gentle warm-up. It's about 25 minutes. It does go through agility, but keeping up is hard. I can do it slow, but not quickly. Yeah, I mean, again, hard to know. It does make me wonder about Appoggio breath management. You know, if you're practicing Appoggio, then you need to perhaps consider evaluating your practice. How are you engaging with your voice? If you're unfamiliar with the phrase that I just used, Appoggio breath management, then you're probably not practicing that. And while there is much debate in internet land about how we quote unquote breathe to sing or support quote unquote our voices, if you haven't looked into what Appoggio breath management is, then that would be a really good place to start. That will absolutely optimize the balance of subglottic air pressure and vocal fold engagement, and that will result in greater agility. You know, I'll share with you the link. It's a one-page website here. Where are you? I haven't checked it in a while. Hopefully it's still up. It's probably still up. It's been up for years. Let's copy that. There you go. That's a very, very good one-page summary of what Appoggio breath management is. It's not necessarily I don't think it really goes into the practice of Appoggio. I've done quite a few videos that touch on it, and I normally don't mention these things, but it keeps on coming up, and so I'll mention it. Appoggio changed my life. That is not an exaggeration. It changed everything for me. And briefly, I was singing and studying and going to university and all that kind of stuff. And my voice just wasn't doing what I thought that it could do or should be able to do as compared to my peers and what I was told I was capable of. It just wasn't as consistent. It wasn't as fluid as I could hear other people demonstrate. And I had been taught for years and years and years to stick my stomach out and pull it back in, and that's how we support and all that kind of stuff. And I think what it was, and so I had long since graduated and moved on and done all sorts of different things, and I'm still having this. And so I needed to grow. I needed to do something. And so I bought Training Tenor Voices, which is a very small book by Richard Miller. It's long since gone out of print. It was out of print when I bought it, actually. And I started reading through it and working through the exercises, and I got to the page on support, and I read it over and over and over because it just didn't make sense to me. It contradicted just about everything that I had been taught. And so I found a teacher who had gone to Northwestern University, and even though they didn't study with Richard Miller, I hoped and assumed that they would have been brought up in that practice. And they were. That was Megan Dibble, wonderful, wonderful instructor, amazing individual and musician. And she helped me make the transition. It took me about 2 years to really get Appoggio working for me. I mean, I started to get the benefits of it probably in about 6 to 8 months' time, but it took me another almost year and a half before I really started to settle into it, before I kind of got it to be more natural for me. And it changed everything: consistency, quality. Every aspect of my singing was impacted by it, and it was profoundly better. So I built a course so that hopefully, if you've been belly breathing, it won't take you 2 years to do what I did. And that's breathing for singing, and that's on my website too. Again, I don't normally talk about these things very much because it feels a bit weird to me to kind of basically self-promote. And I realize there's a lot of criticism for YouTubers selling courses and things like that. But I'll say no more about it. You don't, by all means, look at the link that I just shared by Shirley Emmons. Find resources that are free. There's plenty of resources that I have on YouTube that are all available to you to get the process started. But know that there is also a course that I made, and you can probably find other courses too that, maybe are less expensive or that will suit you better for one reason or another. But investigate Appoggio. That will help your agility for sure. Official David Harper. Hey, Jeff. Whoa. I'm behind, aren't I? No, it's not too bad. Hey, Jeff, the older I get, I'm 67, the hoarser I get. This has worsened with steroid use for breathing that comes through from an inhaler. Do other students that are on these things? Goodness me. Well, I'm sorry that you're having to deal with this. I do not have any students currently that are using inhalers to my knowledge. I personally have had like albuterol inhalers from time to time, but it's one of those things I never seem to use them. I'm so reluctant to pass anything with any consistency back and forth across my vocal folds. This sounds like a job for whoever prescribed the inhaler to you. You might see if you can talk to them. I mentioned albuterol. I don't know if that's the kind that you have. I suspect that there are other varieties of these things. Some might, if it is the inhaler that's irritating your throat, maybe a different medication would be appropriate, but I'm not your doctor. So you're going to have to talk to them about it. You might, if it's really bad, you might consider talking to an ENT and having them have a look at the vocal folds. It could be that if there's any kind of persistent inflammation or edema, that could contribute to the hoarseness. You may also, as a first step too, though, you may consider your hydration. If you are passing that back and forth across the vocal fold, it is not inconceivable that it could be dehydrating or in some way affecting the mucus layer on the vocal fold. So try experimenting with your levels of hydration and see if that might help. And pop back into a chat sometime. Let me know how it all goes. But yeah, sorry to hear that. It's terrible. Talk to your doctor. Jake, how do you warm up compression? As it's not as simple as too light or too loose. There are many gradations of compression, but when you find that refined compression, the voice opens up. Yeah, I mean, so the word compression is relatively new to the vocal lexicon, and it's not a term that I use at all when it comes to vocal technique. I talk about vocal fold adduction, and I talk about subglottic air pressure and balance between the vocal fold adduction and subglottic air pressure. So I don't really know what you mean by compression. When I hear the word compression, I start to think about squeezing the vocal folds together. That to me, I'm not a fan of that lexicon, of talking about it that way, because any thought of actively squeezing the vocal folds together, to me, would seem counterproductive. I demonstrated a dynamic air pressure exercise earlier in this live event. Exercises like that are meant to help us balance out the amount of vocal fold adduction or closure and the amount of subglottic air pressure that we're applying. if we are paying attention to how the voice feels and sounds, and we go through the various cardinal vowels, then we'll hear the performance of those vowels, and we'll be able to tell, like, oh, those are adducting well, those are not. And as we work towards getting them all to function the same, that would be where we are balanced. We're getting equal performance from all the various cardinal vowels. And again, I'm not going to a very wide range here. We would eventually have to spread out amongst the rest of our range, but we would begin in a comfortable area. That's how I would begin to assess vocal fold adduction and practice it for that matter. But I don't know if that's the same thing as compression, because again, I don't use that word and it's not in the books that I read. So I don't know exactly what that means, I'm afraid. But hopefully I've gotten close. Perhaps elaborate a little bit in the chat, and if I can get to it, I will. LOL. All right. Thanks for all your videos. I'm learning to sing just now. Groovy. Haunted rapper. When referring to engagement of the breath support muscles after inhalation and prior to and during singing, which should the muscles actively be flexed, or is it passive engagement? For example, when standing, actively contracting the lower abs while singing will tilt the pelvis forward slightly. Is this movement engagement prior to and during singing the correct engagement muscles? You know what? I would suggest you read the link that it's just above your comments there, the Shirley Emmons link. That website talks quite a bit about muscle engagement. And if I'm not mistaken, it specifically states that the rectus abdominis muscles, which are that's like the six-pack, the ones that are in the front of the abdomen, those are largely, I think her words are largely passive. So there is muscle activity through the core of the body. It is more in the service of maintaining the lateral expansion of the rib cage. The thing of it is, though, is that I do personally have some engagement in the rectus abdominis musculature as well as the oblique muscles. And it is persistently lifting towards my sternum. And it is fairly constant, so it's persistent. And then once I'm done singing my exercises or song, then I can release. Then I relax the muscles and I can drop my engagement. But yeah, I would check out the link, and because it's your question kind of alludes to what I'm talking about, but there's also a lot of other differences. And so my answer is somewhat yes and no. There's quite a bit of muscle activity. None of it is super crushing hard, like that. Certainly not like super crushing hard enough to actually, contort your posture. And yet it's very persistent and very, very global is the word that comes to my mind. There's a lot of activity all the way around the core body. I can sing phrases with notes in my upper register, but I struggle to sing phrases that have a mix of notes in my lower and upper register. Do you have advice on how to improve? Yeah, you have to work on your registration event. I shared a link with a 3-video series earlier on I was going to call it a program. It doesn't really feel like a program, though. I'm just sort of riffing on your questions. But I'll go with it. I shared a link earlier in the program with a 3-video series that I did some time ago. Information is still relevant about registration event practice. I will mention again, the information in that 3-video series is very fast-paced. I didn't mention earlier that it is not about just singing the pitches. It's not just can you hit the notes that I am playing and showing you in the exercises. It is how you do it. You know, a big part of the practice is saying that note's in my cricothyroid dominant singing voice, my upper register. Those notes are not. You, we, we. No, 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 no. Say ma, 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 ma. So on and so forth. Consciously making sure that we're in the register that we intend to be in. Those 3 videos get that process started, and they go through a load of different exercises. It is somewhat fast-paced, but the idea being to show you how it works to work on your registration event. It's not about just hitting the pitches. It's about how you do it. And more incremental process is the course that I did, High Note Bootcamp, and that's over on my website. So basically, I have trouble going back and forth between lower and higher notes. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, EJ, sorry, I didn't see your second comment there, but yes, it made perfect sense to me. And hopefully I have gotten you started on how you can start a practice of that. Whoops. There we are. Jake, how long should you spend warming up in chest voice versus mixed voice versus head voice? Or is warming up around the secondo passaggio the most effective way to warm up? Whatever it takes for the repertoire that you're singing. You know, like to be, I don't, you know, when I start singing every day, I don't need any additional warm-up before I can sing over the secondo passaggio. That's kind of what technique is for. Now, I'll start to sound, you know, more comfortable, and my body will warm up, and I'll start to sound more comfortable and more natural and feel more fluid as I get into my warm-up. But particularly, if you are practicing a good Appoggio practice and you are maintaining good vocal technique, then it doesn't take a lot of time to warm up. Mostly, you're warming up your physical being. You're kind of getting up and ready for the task at hand. So, you know, you have to make the decision for yourself based upon how your voice performs and your repertoire. What does your repertoire require of you? How effective are you at delivering it? You might also keep in mind that the warm-up time is also time to work on technique. So if there's a part of your song that is technically challenging or you are struggling with, then that is meant to be part of your technical practice. You don't just work on it in the context of the song. You pull it out of the song and you work on it separately. And yeah, basically. That's why there's so many warm-ups on the channel, is to try to answer, you know, an unanswerable question, which is what's the perfect warm-up? There isn't one. It's an intersection of what is your skill level, what is your daily practice like, what is the repertoire, and what are the requirements of the repertoire. Those will dictate what is best for your warm-up practice. I'm sorry to not be able to be more specific. You know, I suppose in general, most people start in their chest voice range. And then as they kind of get comfortable and their body starts to get warmed up, then they start to move outwards from there. Jeff, what is your vocal story? What teachers did you work with? What methods did you study that led you to the method you teach today? Yeah, I mean, I think I've said about all I'm going to say about that today. I don't like to go back too much into ancient history, but I feel very, very happy to mention Megan. I haven't spoken to her in too long, but she last I heard, she was professor of vocal pedagogy at the San Francisco Conservatory. She was instrumental in helping me to adopt Appoggio breath management. And she's just a wonderful person. Beyond all of that, if you had a chance to have a lesson or 100 lessons with her, I would highly recommend you do it. She's just great, and you can find her online. And yeah, and that was really when, that was when I discovered Richard Miller's teachings, specifically training tenor voices, and started to work my technique more in that direction. I had dabbled in a variety of other techniques and a variety of other teachers and methods that don't, in retrospect, look much like methods, but just looked more like sing the song. And, I had a fair degree of success with a lot of this stuff, but it wasn't really doing for my voice what I wanted to be able to do. And so that's what led me to trying to explore more information. I got training tenor voices and so on and so forth. So, yeah. But I've always wanted to be a musician. I've always been absolutely fascinated with music. I love singing. I love teaching singing. And I love working on the secondo passaggio, honestly. I think that that's just fascinating. That's probably part of it is because I struggled with it so much and couldn't understand why my voice was broken and why I so adamantly go on and on about how our voices aren't broken. It's not the break, it's the secondo passaggio. Where's my tip jar? Well, thank you for mentioning that. I think by the chat, there's like a little thingy with a $sign. So you can it's very kind of you to ask. You can certainly click on that. And I think if you go, I think it's tipjeffrolka.com. I think that's the URL I got. Let's see here. Let's see, I'm probably wrong. I don't know. Nope, that worked. So, I wouldn't dare put this in the chat if it hadn't been asked, but if you feel so, I guess it's going to look like a Stream Elements link now, but that's what it is. It's very kind of you to ask. I hadn't given it much thought at all. It used to be that there was like a thing on screen, but I don't know what happened to it, and it was more important to me to get things going and do the live event today. I didn't spend any time on that sort of stuff. I am going to have to go, so I'm going to take another question or two if I can. When I am singing and I belt for a longer period of time, I start to lose my voice, and the only time I can sing in my head voice properly is after I wake up. So how do I not tire it and work my head voice? Well, practice your cricothyroid dominant singing voice before you do the belting would be what I would suggest. And then if you need to belt for whatever reason, you can do that, but you will have already worked on your technique for singing in your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. By the way, I love your videos. I warm up with your warm-ups every day. Thank you, Dev. I really appreciate that. But yeah, everyone's got their reasons. But yeah, I would just try to set aside some time to practice so that you can work on your technique and then, do whatever you need to do with the belting. I think that's about it. Hey, thanks everybody for popping in today. This was really fun. Oh wait, got one more here. How long should I vocal practice a day? Generally speaking, it depends on what you're trying to do. I would say if you've got 15 to 20 minutes to work on your technique in addition to whatever it is you're singing, that would be great. that will show you reasonable, consistent results. So 15, 20 minutes of scales and thirds and exercises and arpeggios and stuff like that, and then go on to your repertoire and sing the repertoire. I think I can do this last one. I have 2 questions. How is your jaw supposed to move when singing vowels and going higher? And what exercises are okay for me? I'm a head airy voice up to G5 and from G2. The jaw, what we really want from the jaw is flexibility. There are different schools of thought on jaw position. Some people will say it needs to be wide open. Others will say that it depends on the vowel sound, that the internal shape of the oral cavity needs to be flexible and respond to the vowel that you're singing. Roughly, for ah, it can be more open in the front. The aperture can be more open. But for an O vowel, oh, not sung like that, but you get the idea, then you need to have what's called a reverse megaphone. So there's more opening in the rear of the oral cavity. And in order to do that, the front aperture needs to be a little bit closer. And what exercises are okay for me? I'm a head airy voice. Not sure what that means exactly. It just sounds like you're not getting full adduction of the vocal fold. I would start with dynamic air pressure exercises. I know I've been talking about that a lot today, but if you have an airy voice, then it's really difficult to say what you might be doing. So maybe get into some dynamic air pressure exercises and get the adduction and subglottic air pressure balanced out, and then take it from there. Thanks for everyone for popping in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your questions. Hopefully I've helped. If you've got follow-ups or things like that, I'm going to try and do this more regularly. So come on back and let's have a chat, all right? Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye. Let's see if I can